Welcome to the podcast. If you'd like to listen to an ad-free version of this episode and all of our episodes, then search True Crime Today Premium Plus on Apple Podcasts and press subscribe. That's our premium channel where all of our ad-free and advanced episodes live, all in one place. True Crime Today Premium Plus. Search it on Apple Podcasts and press subscribe. Even try it for 3 days free.
You're about to take a deep dive into one of the biggest true crime cases in the universe. Or, at least, on our part of the planet. From the Hidden Killers podcast and True Crime Today.
You know, we talk about someone like reaching the top of the music industry, building an empire. Diddy's name is right up there. Mm-hmm. But recently, he's been making headlines for all the wrong reasons.
Yeah, it's true.
It's
this isn't
not really your typical like celebrity scandal.
No.
The arrest itself is on a whole other level.
It's on a whole other level, and it's got people digging into Diddy's past.
Okay, so let's dive right in. We've got two news articles that lay out some pretty serious allegations. We're talking sex trafficking, racketeering charges that could carry some major consequences.
Exactly, and I think what's particularly interesting is how this arrest has brought to light other incidents from Diddy's past, stuff that might have otherwise stayed buried.
Like that footage with Justin Bieber?
Yeah.
That's been making the rounds online. I have to admit, seeing that was what made me realize this was more than just like a run-in with the law.
Yeah, it's unsettling to say the least, especially that clip from Jimmy Kimmel Live back in 2011. Bieber was still a teenager then, and Diddy's whole demeanor, calling himself Big Brother, joking about giving Bieber a Lamborghini, it just feels off.
And it gets worse.
It does.
Diddy actually says something like, Bieber knows better than to talk about what we get up to.
Right.
It's almost like a threat.
It definitely raises questions.
Yeah.
And then there's the other clip, the one where Diddy talks about having custody of a 15-year-old Bieber. He says they're going to go full crazy.
Oh, God.
The language itself is just so irresponsible.
It makes you wonder how Bieber looks back on those experiences now. Mm-hmm. Especially considering his comments a few years ago about wanting to protect Billie Eilish from the darker side of the industry.
Right. It highlights the responsibility that comes with fame and influence, something that Diddy arguably didn't take seriously enough.
Yeah.
But this Bieber footage is just one layer of the story.
Right.
We also need to unpack the allegations made by Adria English, the former adult film star.
This is where it gets really complicated. English claims that Diddy essentially groomed her for what she calls freak-offs at his parties.
Right.
And that she was later blackballed when she tried to distance herself.
Her story speaks to a potential pattern of behavior, one that's at odds with the public image Diddy has worked so hard to create. And when you combine that with the Bieber footage, it starts to paint a very different picture.
And it's not just her word against his.
Right.
English names some pretty big names she claims were at these parties.
She does.
People like Donald Trump, Diana Ross, even Al Sharpton.
It's important to be clear, though, that English isn't accusing any of these other individuals of any wrongdoing.
Right.
But the fact that she's alleging they were present at these gatherings adds another layer of complexity to this whole situation.
It's a lot to process, for sure. And it raises some serious questions about the power dynamics at play here. English claims she was afraid to speak out because of Diddy's influence. It makes you wonder how many other people might have similar stories. It's like, how do you even begin to reconcile these allegations with, like, the Diddy we thought we knew?
Yeah.
The music icon, the successful businessman, philanthropist.
Yeah.
You know?
It's a classic case of the public persona versus the private reality. And it really makes you question how much we as the public actually know about the people we elevate to these positions of power and influence.
And what happens now? I mean, from a legal standpoint, what kind of uphill battle is Diddy facing?
Well, the charges themselves are incredibly serious. Sex trafficking, racketeering, and the fact that there are multiple accusations spanning several years certainly doesn't work in his favor.
So even if he, maintains his innocence?
Yeah.
The damage is already done.
To a certain extent, yes. His reputation has taken a major hit, and we've seen time and time again that public opinion can be just as powerful as any court ruling, especially in the age of social media.
Social media has been relentless. It seems like everyone has an opinion on this.
Yeah. That's the thing about a scandal like this. It forces a reckoning. Not just for Diddy himself, but for us as a culture that often turns a blind eye to this kind of behavior, especially when it comes from those we perceive as untouchable.
It's true. There's always been this, undercurrent of rumor and speculation around Diddy, whispers about his parties, his treatment of women. But it's like this arrest has ripped the lid off, and now everyone's paying attention.
Right.
And will it make a difference?
That's the question, isn't it? And it'll be interesting to see if this time anything actually changes.
Right.
Will there be a real effort to hold him accountable, or will this just become another example of a powerful man escaping with a slap on the wrist?
It's a lot to unpack. And it goes beyond just Diddy, right? This feels like a much bigger conversation about power, exploitation, accountability within the music industry as a whole.
Absolutely. We can't ignore the fact that this industry has a long and troubled history of exploiting young talent, particularly young women, and often it's the most vulnerable who are afraid to speak out for fear of retaliation or blacklisting.
And it's not just the music industry, is it? We see this play out in Hollywood, in fashion, in so many industries, where power is concentrated in the hands of a select few.
You're absolutely right. It's a systemic issue. And it speaks to the importance of creating a culture where people feel safe to come forward to share their stories without fear of retribution.
It's that whole speak truth to power thing.
Right.
But it's easier said than done when you're talking about someone like Diddy with all his wealth and influence.
Yeah. It takes immense courage to stand up to that kind of power, knowing the potential risks. And that's why it's so important that we listen to those who do find their voice, that we support them and amplify their stories.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I'm left with this unsettling feeling. We've gone from celebrating Diddy's success to grappling with these really disturbing allegations. It's a stark reminder that things aren't always what they seem.
And that's the power of asking questions, of digging deeper. It's easy to accept the carefully crafted narratives that celebrities and their publicists present to the world. But it's our responsibility to look beyond the surface, to examine the evidence, and to hold these figures accountable for their actions.
I think this whole experience has been a wake-up call for me, and I hope for our listeners as well. It makes you question everything you thought you knew about someone like Diddy. And it forces you to confront some uncomfortable truths about the industry and the culture that enabled his behavior.
Yeah, and perhaps that's the most important takeaway from all of this. It's a reminder that we can't be passive consumers of information. We need to be critical thinkers, to question assumptions, and to demand better from those who hold positions of power and influence.
So here's a final thought for you to ponder as we sign off. How has this deep dive changed your perception of Diddy and the music industry? And what responsibility do we all share in ensuring that this kind of behavior is no longer tolerated or excused?
Strap in and get ready to go back in time. Gen X Time Machine is here to transport you back to the glorious days of neon, big hair, and cassette tapes that always needed rewinding.
To figure out where Tupperware went wrong, we kind of got to start at the beginning.
Remember when MTV actually played music videos? Or when lunch wasn't complete without Dunkaroos?
Yeah, a little bit like trying to recapture the magic of a bygone era.
We're diving into all that and more. So if you want to relive the 80s and 90s in all their retro glory, hit up Gen X Time Machine wherever you get your podcasts.
VHS is looking like the obvious winner, right?
Oh, and don't forget the rise of the video rental store. Remember,
Subscribe, because who doesn't need another excuse to avoid adulting? You're welcome. The Gen X Time Machine.